Okay, well, welcome. This is a bit different to normal. We would normally send out some kind of newsletter to update supporters and funders on how we're doing, what we've been doing as an organization, what we've been doing with young people. We thought we'd do something a little different this time, particularly in response to the death of George Floyd and some of the discussions around racism that we've been having and everyone's been having since then. So we have decided to have a conversation between myself, my name's Luke, I'm the CEO of XLP, and we've got Claude and Natalie with us. So we're gonna have a conversation and we will see where it goes. So can I get you guys to introduce yourself? Natalie, who are you, what do you do?
I'm Natalie Tomlinson and I'm the mentoring project manager for Southwark. So my role is to train, recruit and manage volunteer mentors with young people aged between 11 to 18.
I'm Claude Murray. I'm the Chief Safeguarding Officer within XLP, as well as the Mentor Program Manager. So I oversee all the mentoring.
Great, thanks guys. And well, we're here to talk about race, to talk about disparity, to talk about racism, injustice. And I guess putting this out there, you know, I already feel a bit nervous. As a white guy talking about this, I think I heard you, Natalie, say something that discomfort's a good thing because it helps you move your position. I like that. So Ethan, one of the team, is always telling me it's okay to be uncomfortable. And I think particularly, you know, in this discussion that's happening now, it would be easy to stay silent because it's uncomfortable, or easy to stay silent because not quite sure what the right thing is to say. And so I thought let's just have a conversation and talk about some of this stuff. I guess from us as an organizational point of view, it's interesting to talk about. I feel very aware that we've only had white men at the top of the organization for the 25 years that we've been going. That said, we've also had quite a lot of discussion over the last year or so about racism and how we kind of talk about that internally. I think the other thing I'd love to talk about is just what this means for young people. You know, that's what the charity is about, is creating positive futures for young people. And again, we work with a lot of young people from different backgrounds, and obviously talking about racism is part of helping people overcome barriers to get into a positive future. So maybe let's kick off with, well, I guess with the George Floyd tragedy. Kick us off, Natalie. What's that meant for you and for the place where you live?
For me personally, the George Floyd murder was, it was far bigger than just him. For me, that was the last thing, the most recent thing that actually caused almost like an uprising, that caused a lot of people and helped, in a way, unfortunately, to create a lot of conversation. For me, it brought back some memories of stuff, of racism and things that I've experienced. I felt a deep anger when I learned about it. I chose not to watch the video because I felt like I've had to have almost like an internal filter. I can't allow myself to watch it, and I know what happens at the end. But it caused me to be really angry, but also caused me to have a lot of conversations with mentors, even with some young people within Southwark on the mentoring program who had wanted to protest, and with parents, but also within my community. It's opened a lot of conversation, a great deal amount of conversation, and a lot of even just people being just a bit more friendly, making more of an effort to smile and how are you? And when people say, how are you? Very often we say, oh, hi, how are you? And it's just like a way of saying hello, but it's been meaningful. There's been substance to it. People have wanted to know. So for me, as I said, I was very angry, but I chose to use my anger in positive ways to try to make a difference and bring about more voices and try to do things in a way to help towards making a change. But I was very, very angry because that just happened to be caught on camera. That isn't, that wasn't a one-off, and it isn't something that only happens in America or only happens in other countries. That happens every day, but not everybody gets to see it.
Yeah, Claude, what about for you?
Wow, for me, it's quite nuanced, man. It's really layered, really layered from a personal place, just my own, dealings with racism that I've encountered, nuanced from like a faith perspective, nuanced from it being, this is not an isolated American incident, nuanced in terms of this is historical and there's so many links and connections to this. Nuanced in the sense of COVID, if COVID wasn't happening, would there be so much attention? Because it's everybody's on lockdown, so you're forced to see what's going on. And as Natalie said, it's not a standalone the situation, and just highlights the relationship with the Black community worldwide with police. I think if I start from the layered of perspective of my own self, just a reminder of of how entrenched racism is in the hearts of man. I don't mind sharing. I can recall my first incident of racism being a 6-year-old, and it made me think of that when I was playing with my friends. Two of them were Black, one was white, and we were playing football in our local community on the side road, and we were not too far away from a football stadium that had well-known racist supporters. And I remember playing football on the side of the road, and hooligans, I'll use that terminology, hooligans walking past, grown men calling a 6-year-old, I don't even know if I can use the language on here, but like the C word, being called a coon, being called a gollywog, being called an N-word. And I was just 6, and I just remember just standing in amazement, like I didn't know what happened. I didn't know like what was going on, but I definitely could feel anger and hate being directed at me and my 2 other Black friends who were the same age as me. We were 6 years old. We were children in primary school, and that wasn't aimed at my white friend. And we both looked at each other like we knew that in that moment, this was about our skin. We didn't know why, but we just knew that we were made to feel different. And we had to develop a coping mechanism. When that football team was playing home matches, we would play football from about maybe 11 till 12:30, and then when the guys would come to play football, we would come to watch the game, we would go home, and then once they'd gone to the match, we would come back out to play, and then we knew what time the football match finished. So even at that age, in our young experience, we were developing coping mechanisms to just try and exist in a world, being Black without something happening to us. And that was at, as I say, as a 6, I think. It's been said the knee, the police officer's knee on the neck of George Floyd is a representation of how Black people have felt, have not even felt, have been oppressed over the years. And that knee representing, the racism, the brutality, from slavery, stuff being on our back and trying to weigh us down, and, not letting us be able to breathe and exist. So this, so much, it brought up so much, and a number of, moments of conversations with, with my friends, who have shared similar experiences of racism, from a traumatic experience, us exploring that, even in, approaching our 40s or deep into our 40s, like, and then also just like with colleagues, friends who are white, having conversations with them, and, and I felt like there were some friends who or colleagues were, or individuals that were white were kind of unsure how to engage. I know this is happening, and it kind of like you could sense a bit of a tentativeness or walking on eggshells. Can I reach out? And I found, if I'm honest, during that time, there was a lot of educating. I was doing a lot of educating, my white colleagues, my white friends. And it was very exhausting, just the whole experience of, revisiting your own trauma, you know, knowing that this has been going on for years. It's not just George Floyd, you know, there's Tamir Rice, Sandra Bland, you know, so many different individuals. And, you know, England is, you know, not unguilty in that as well. You know, there are a number of, you know, individuals, black individuals who have died, you know, in custody at the hands of police brutality. So it's so nuanced, but I guess it has created an opportunity to have real dialogue. But I do feel like it's a time where, you know, talking, it's good to talk, but action needs to take place. And yeah, man, you know, we were talking about bystanders, you know, and there were bystanders there, and they will be traumatized. But just me and my community and my network of friends, you know, we've said that we will not be bystanders. We refuse to be bystanders. We will not just stand by, you know, and we will do what we can in our own little spheres of influences. So having conversations like this. So yeah, it's been tough. You know, it has been tough. But, you know, still we rise and still we try to do what we can with the power that we have.
Yeah, and you talk, yeah, go on, Natalie.
Just also just wanted to add, like, my first experience of racism was, I might have been about 8, with my mum in a supermarket, and a cashier mentioned, was basically saying she couldn't afford it and called her, you know, the N-word. And I remember my mum's response to it, which taught me that it wasn't right and that it should always be challenged. Right up until my adult life, I've experienced racism quite a bit. Often it's been very indirectly, though, often. And you can laugh it off sometimes. To my in my adult life, I think my most recent experience, or what I felt to be a racist, something that was had race kind of inclination to it, was even earlier this year. And I think that was being at an event, and I felt quite attacked. And for me, it's just as Claude says, the word bystander apathy. And when people are around that could, because I was hurt to my core in that situation, and I feel that people who were present at different times and throughout it didn't say anything. And it's not necessarily that people don't care. Sometimes people don't know how to address things, you know, don't know how to, you know. So I think throughout the years of having it, watching throughout my years, like even working in schools and seeing other people come and climbing up the ladders or getting opportunities to do things or be parts of bigger things and different things. And you'll look at yourself like, wow, and you know in your heart what it is, you know, and but also not really directly. I've never really had that often. Only a few times been called like monkey, go back to your country. And that's more when I was a bit younger, where my mentality would be to challenge it in not necessarily the best way, you know. Whereas now it's, I feel that with this situation, that brought that to me, because I felt when he was murdered, and knowing that the other police officers, people that was around, people filming it, people standing around, there's that thing. If someone had called it out, if someone had taken a step to do something, or even at the risk of maybe getting pushed or shoved whatever they're self, but if someone had called it out and stepped out, would he still be alive? You know, so there's those things. Like sometimes when things come up, we must call it out, we must challenge it, we must say, no, that's not acceptable, you know. And I found myself since then even being mindful of little jokes or things that I might make, and being really, really conscious of what I put out, because I don't want to make the odd joke that I just think, yeah, it's fine, because I don't have an issue when people have sorts of jokes. However, if I have to be mindful, because if I'm saying certain jokes and if someone else says a joke that they think's funny, but it offends me, what happens then if I am kind of, you know, showing that it's okay? So there's been a great deal of self-reflection within me, a great deal.
Could I just jump on the back? Like the self-reflection, I think it's the time for all of humanity to audit our hearts. Yeah, like, you know, we have Ofsted, you know, we have various regulation service that go around auditing establishments, but I think this is the time when every man and woman has to audit their hearts and look within. And, you know, we might find, individuals might find some stuff that they're like, wow, or they might even be already aware of it, but it's about addressing it. And I think our history is, being children of the Windrush generation, living in England, coming over here to, to help better the country. And then the issues that we faced, the racism that my mum faced and her counterparts and friends, wanting to maybe, go to certain churches, but being told you can't come to this church, because you're black, and just from then, like how that would have impacted them. And there's just this, generational, I guess, sense of racist trauma that has, impacted the community and still does. So I'm almost 40, and I mentioned the reference of being 6. So in my head, I'm like, okay, for 34 years, I've encountered racism, but my mum was carrying me, so she would have dealt with, racism. So that impacts me, and I just think, if we think of like, in terms of like Stephen Lawrence and, how that impacted the black community, and how that, the relationship with the police. So I really highlight that the George Floyd, tragic death was not a USA isolated incident, but the correlations across to being, black British people and living our experiences in England, encountering racism. There's so much correlations.
Can I just also add, I think, you see that we were doing the self-reflection, because sometimes you have people that might say, well, I'm not racist or I'm not this, but there might be certain habits or things, or just things that they've been used to. And I think, like if you've got a cream and you might think that the cream is empty, but if you hit it enough, like for example, Palmer's cocoa butter, if you hit it enough, there's like the residue, there's bits that is still there. And I feel that in the real conversations, I feel that you help to release those things because you're getting educated. You're being heard, you're being listened to, you're being able to release certain things that people can correct you where you need to be corrected. But also, it's just that point of like putting everything, like when you recycle, you put your stuff in the correct bin kind of thing, And I think it's so important. And that's why I think conversations like this are so, so, so powerful and important at this time.
Yeah, and I guess partly what this conversation is about, and what we've been trying to do a bit of internally over the last 18 months, but I guess again in the last week particularly, it's come up, and you guys have challenged me on that this is something we need to keep talking about and keep talking about. It's not something which you have a day on and then you've fixed it. It's a conversation we need to keep having. But I guess part of the reason we're having this is for education, education for ourselves internally. But the reason even we're recording this is education for what you guys are witnessing in your community. What some of the young people will be witnessing in their communities. How we as youth workers, I'm not a youth worker. How we as youth workers as an organisation can be helping. You say, in the last few weeks, Claude, you've been exhausted in a way of kind of educating people, probably educating people like me a lot of the time, often well-intentioned, but don't always get it right, still can be insensitive, still can get things wrong. And yeah, I think that's what I've seen kind of. There's been so much information coming. There's been a lot of recommendation about what to read, what to watch. There's been correcting of stuff. Which has been all helpful. I've read a few books over the last year, and seeing them coming up again, and people saying, "Oh, this is stuff you've got to be reading," and a lot of it is about education, isn't it? It's about understanding history, understanding experience. I'm struck by at the moment. I barely leave the house at the moment. Yeah,
me too.
Maybe go to a shop, but maybe not even that. And so it's easy. It's even easier to kind of be in our own little bubble than it might be. I might have grown up in a neighborhood which was primarily white, but even that now I'm just living in a house which is primarily white. So I think a time like this is
not just the walls. You're not just talking about the walls, right?
I'm not just talking about the walls. Yeah, I was just talking about the walls. So yeah, it's easy to be isolated, I guess. I think that cultural isolation can lead to can lead to racism, or can lead to bias, or can lead to
Mm.
lack of education, or can lead to confusion. And yeah, I think that's a conversation I want us to be having. And
Yeah.
I'm grateful to people like you who call me up on it. I think I think it's great that you call me up, but also I think it's great that within the organization we can have these conversations, and that there's a lot of grace. There's a lot of grace for when we get it wrong, because I think probably people like me are a bit fearful of having conversations, fearful of getting it wrong. You talked about, Claude, your childhood, and since then there's been a lot of change. In one hand, change in language, change in awareness of what language is right and what language is wrong, what's appropriate, or what's or just more aware of inappropriate words, or more people being kind of, you can't say certain things, which maybe 20 years ago there just wasn't that same conversation. And yet at the same time, other things haven't changed, and we're still talking about police brutality that we were 20 years ago and hundreds of years ago. So there's movement, but there's also a lot to be done.
Can I ask, Luke, how did George Floyd's death impact you?
I mean, I like Natalie, I couldn't watch a whole video. But I can't really, I don't want to watch someone dying on TV. And I think any injustice, any death is heartbreaking, but when it's done, when there's such injustice to it, and so clearly that somebody who has power and authority and has a real role in upholding society and upholding law and kind of upholding all the things which we think society should be based on, is using that and totally kind of flipping. So I found that almost incredible that it was happening, and at the same time kind of heartbreaking and devastating. And I think there are other things happening around, and have happened in the last few months which haven't got as much attention, but were as tragic, and like you say, Natalie, other things are happening on a daily or weekly basis which just aren't being filmed. I think obviously it's terrible, but it's good that it's opened the conversation. Like you say, Claude, this can't just be a conversation, it has to turn to action. And one of the actions for us as an organization is how do we respond to that internally. We talked in the past about privilege and about power, and who are the people who hold privilege and who are the people who hold power generally in society, and what are those people to do? How do they let go of that, or how do they bring other people into that place? But ultimately, privilege and power, they're funny words, or they're very powerful words, or very emotive words, which come with them often thoughts of history where those things haven't, when we talk about someone of privilege, we don't necessarily think it's a good thing. And someone in power, we don't always think that's a good thing. And probably because a lot of those powers and privilege have been abused.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good point. It's a good point. It's just made me realize, like, the conversations I'll be having with my son. I know we've spoken about this before, Luke, just, us both being fathers, that's something that we both share in common, beyond being males, that we're fathers, we're raising children. And the conversation that I will have to have with my son is how he conducts himself in the presence of police. Because if he doesn't conduct himself in a way that they seem appropriate, what could happen to him? And those are like, just knowing that I'm going to sit down and have to have that conversation with him at some point, makes me uneasy, but I know the necessity and the importance of it, because, I'm raising a young black boy, in London, in a city, or, and even like for the prayers that I would have to pray over him, and, for God's protection, just because of the issues that he will encounter as a young black boy. And that's something that I carry as a father, and it's not light, it's not light.
And I was just thinking when you're saying that, it's the conversations a lot of the young people we work with, their parents will be having with them.
Yeah.
Even the youth workers will be having with them.
100%.
So I wonder if we can just think about the young people and what does this mean for our work? I mean, in one way, we're still fighting for the same thing. We're fighting for positive futures. But what does it mean? How are the young people we're working with, how are they seeing this? Black young people and white young people, how are they responding? And what does it mean for us as an organization, as a charity, for youth workers in general? Love to hear your thoughts on that.
I think one of the things that is going to be happening next week, for example, the mentoring project managers, we are going to be having a online meeting with any of the mentors that are available to really discuss, like, how can we best support our young people and share maybe things that maybe our young people are saying to the mentors, and, you know, what can we do? How can we as individuals make a difference, but also in working with the mentees, especially if we don't fully understand where they're coming from. So for example, I have some white males who are working with young black males. So we want to have a space where people can come and just be real. And if they're struggling, they need some advice, they need some tips and guidance, so that those real conversations can happen. Because ultimately, whether we're uncomfortable or not, there's a work and there's a need that we have to meet of those young people, regardless of how we may feel. And so I think it's one of the things of young people is being really available to have those real conversations, and to be maybe a bit uncomfortable at starting those conversations and listening to how they really feel, you know, but also as an organization, being prepared to support our volunteers. If it's not impossible that a white male or a white female could be talking to her mentee and could say, you know, how are you feeling? They might say, oh, right now I just hate white people. It's not impossible. These are young people that have needs and issues and different things. It's not impossible. And it's then, how do we ensure that, yes, that young person has an opportunity to say how they really feel, but where's the support for that person that's supporting them, that has to receive that? So that there's a network of support, and we can be making sure that volunteer still knows that they're valid and understand them, where they're at, how they feel, that they, you know, they might hurt. So it's about being prepared for some of those conversations, then looking at things, how can we educate the young people? Are there books we can get them? Are there things, you know, positive posts or things that we can direct them to? How can we help to, because there's a lot of unlearning that needs to be done at this time. A great deal of unlearning that needs to be done.
Just unpack what you mean by that, Natalie.
When I say unlearning, there's a lot of preconceived ideas. There's a lot of ideas and things that have come down, some from people, you know, like maybe our grandparents, parents, things that they've carried, and some of the young people just have a particular perception, you know, of how things be. So for example, on a personal note, when I was younger, if I heard that a child swore at a parent, for me, I would often believe that must have been a white child, because I can't see a black child being able to do that and still stand, you know. Certain little negative, and that's just by hearing little comments or things that would be said in the classroom, friends, whatever. That's because picking up other people's viewpoints and things. You know, some people always used to say, when I was younger, people say, you know, oh, if you was anyone that had African descent, they used to call it rubber lips. You know, there's certain negative perceptions. You know, if you was a black child then, and you go on different trips and that with the school, it was thought that you'd be able to swing better if you go places like Go Ape and different things. Really negative things that became accepted. And sometimes you laugh at it, see it as a joke, but it becomes ingrained. So it becomes normal. Then you're having a conversation or maybe busting a joke with someone else, bringing that same thought. And I think there's a lot of things that have to be moved, have to be, you know, eradicated, that, you know, we have to unlearn these things. That is not the way it is. There is more to this than that. Do you understand? So I think it's about really trying to get rid of and owning, like, you know what, yeah, I may have contributed, I might have said certain things, and it was wrong. That was out of ignorance, you know? So that's what I would say on that.
Yeah, I think in terms of our young people, I feel like some steps and strides have been made during this time, especially online. I know that, I'm a part of the X Mobile, X Arts, Insta Live on Natalie Laughs, because she loves the vibes me and Berry Spring. It's on Instagram Live. We're
That's
there
some of our
on,
music stuff, yeah.
yeah, that's our music stuff for, I guess our music outreach into the community. And as we're on lockdown, we're using Instagram Live to engage the young people. And, young people can come on and, sing, rap, share poems, but we also are having discussions about life, and, during this time we have been speaking about, the racism, police brutality, and they've wanted to speak about it. And it's been amazing that they feel that they can use this space that has been allocated them to talk about it, and sharing their thoughts and opinions and how it impacts them and how it makes them feel and their families feel, and, asking what they can do, so, and this is Black young people and white young people, some young people want to be able to protest. Some young people at the moment want to write music, but because stuff is in the world is so heavy, sometimes it's impacting their creative process, and they're just like, I'm just processing what's going on, and the aim and hope is to be able to write something to communicate how I'm feeling. But Claude and Berish, just right now in the moment, I'm not able to, and we've been able to, let them understand that's not even a writer's block, that's based on what's going on. You're digesting what's going on, and in due time, hopefully something will come out. I know the girls on Instagram, Instagram girls page, they've been, creating safe spaces to talk about this. And, they had someone, come on last Friday to kind of, share her experience of being a Black woman, but also to educate and referencing books and films. So I feel like so far, in terms of the young people with online, we have been able to give a platform. Maybe there's some more stuff that we could do in terms of, maybe some group meetings, bringing young people together with youth workers. I think in terms of staff and within the team, I believe staff have been impacted. I've had conversations with staff and, how it impacts them and where it brings them to. And, I think it's important to give them a voice, to share, not to be like, I'm going to bleed in public and, I'm going to, pour out my Black trauma, but like, there could be a space that's created for staff to be able to talk about how they're feeling, and not just Black staff and white staff, and it's a mutual meeting of minds and meeting of hearts, and sharing experiences.
There's something refreshing about young people that they set how it is.
100%.
They're less worried about getting it wrong. I'm a bit worried about getting it wrong. I'm a bit worried that, how people are going to view me.
Yeah.
They say it how it is,
100%.
That's why I love them.
About that. And that's the beauty of some of the music and creative stuff, is that it channels that expression of, this is how I'm feeling now, and I'm getting it out there. And it doesn't matter whether it's right or wrong, it's how I'm feeling.
Yeah. There's a young girl, she's written a piece. So she joined one of our, Zoom music sessions that we run on a Thursday. And, the piece was powerful. It came from a place within, artistically and creatively, it was out of this world, but just the raw emotion and what she was able to articulate in a short space of time, was done so eloquently, but without hiding her frustration, her angst, but also her hopes for the future. And it would be amazing if we, like the aim is to get her to record it.
I'm hoping we're going to play it after this.
Yeah, that is the. If I'm totally honest, she has recorded it.
Okay.
And she sent the lyrics over to Barry, so he's going to be working on it. But I think we are trying to create spaces for young people to talk. But maybe there's some more stuff that we can do, and I think empowering our volunteers and staff to not feel uncomfortable and to actually ask, how you're feeling. Because if you broke your leg and I saw you in a cast, I would ask how you're feeling.
Yeah.
If I knew something happened to you, or to your family, I would ask, oh, Jason, or, Marie, how you doing? And I don't need to have I don't need to be coming from an ultimately educated, informed place to have this conversation. I've just got to have empathy and be prepared to listen. And I think that's really important, because that then gives the young person the gateway, the platform to share how they're feeling.
Yeah.
It's almost like here's permission. Yeah.
I think as well, one of the things for me that's been really unique with XLP at this time is that we've got Black Lives Matter, which is a big thing, and there's a lot of hurt, a lot of pain, a lot of trauma. And then we've got COVID-19, you know, that's been going on prior to that. Well, not even prior, because Black Lives Matter has been going on for time, but you know what I mean. We've had these things going on. And with the both still being able to work, create platforms for people, being able to check in. I've had parents that will call just to say, you know what, thank you so much, because they really were worried when it was COVID. Is my young person going to be left? You know, and it's been really unique. I've had other professionals on social networking platforms. It's like saying, you know, how are you managing? On our end, we're struggling. Is there something that you're finding useful and having real conversations? Because it's not about, well, us against them, you know what I mean? The bottom line is, all different organisations, we want to see an improvement for young people. So it's been feeling away and saying, well, look, this is what I'm finding working. This is what some of my volunteers have said, and people learning from each other, which has been really great. But when I look at the magnitude of each thing, Black Lives Matter, you know, COVID-19, and we've still been able to create, I'm proud of that. We've still been able, everyone, you know, nearly every department is still working online, even if we haven't been comfortable with it to start with. You know, every platform, young people's needs are still getting to be met. And these are heavy, heavy things. And I do think that it would be, like Claude said, maybe having more platforms. Maybe that could be something for the young people to bring forward to the table or something. You know, it would be great to see like a core team of young people with XLP mini leaders or whatever, you know, that can put forward things and that, you know, and because there's such a great need. And I think that it's been wonderful as a team. Like I've had throughout this time, I've had people call me in and I've heard the uncomfort in their voices, like from colleagues, like, I just phoned to see how you are, Natalie. I'm like, you know what, I'm angry, you know, but I'm good, but I appreciate this phone call and the check-in, you know, and it's been lovely. You know, like, how I just thought I'd give you a quick call and say, hey, listen, this is where I'm at, because I will say where I'm at. You know, but it's been lovely, really like a gelling together, and I haven't felt like I'm on the phone or I'm on a Zoom. I felt like I'm sitting down reasoning with a colleague, you know what I mean? So it's been really amazing, because when you have that outlet to be able to say how you really feel and talking of those real conversations, you have released a lot of what you don't need to carry into your work, so that you can be your utmost best for the young people and the families that you're supporting. You know, and I think that's important.
Yeah, I just love what you mentioned earlier on about young people just being unfiltered. It's just amazing. It's just amazing. Yeah, and you know, just been seeing it during this time, them just expressing how they feel. And I think, as Natalie's saying, the great thing is we actually have a platform during this time to give them to express how they feel. Whereas, you know, many people maybe have been unable to give young people a platform to be able to do that. So I think that's a massive credit in how we've had to adapt and be flexible within this lockdown time, but to still be able to give you a chance to share how you feel about this current topic.
Yeah. This has been youth work.
Yeah.
This has been youth work. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's youth work with it, you know, it's had a twist, hasn't it? You know, like we kind of really had to change the way we're doing things, change the way we think about things, think about safeguarding in a different way. I know, Claude, you've been thinking a lot about that. And, what we haven't talked about much, and maybe we won't now, but is just how the two things you're talking about, Natalie, how they also overlap, you know, and how the report we've seen about how COVID disproportionately affects people from Black communities. A lot of that's to do with economics, and a lot of the young people we're working with are coming from poor communities or from tough backgrounds. And so I think even as we start to look, I mean, I don't know whether we are starting to look towards beyond COVID yet or not. Maybe we're still right in the middle of it. But even as we're thinking what's ahead, before this all started, I remember whenever I spoke, I would talk about trauma, because the young people we work with have experienced trauma because of knife violence, and either they've experienced it very directly themselves or the communities they're in have experienced it. And now we're seeing that the whole planet is going to experience some kind of trauma on the back of this. It's a collective trauma. But the young people we work with are already used to that trauma, or some, real level of trauma. And yeah, how we're going to be ready to deal with that, how the UK is going to be ready to deal with that, how society is going to deal with that. There are real big challenges ahead of us. And I know you guys have your clinical supervision to help kind of get us ready to deal with trauma. But the world's going to need, is going to need a way of processing this. And here we're talking about another trauma thrown on top is racism suddenly kind of coming really to the surface in people's minds and hearts on a global scale.
I really think as well, when it comes to the trauma, there's so many layers, because there's been so many conversations with mentors and young people, like if they want to have counselling and so on, but also thinking of like when Claude spoke earlier about the fact of being a father to a young black male, and that he's going to have a conversation, which is sad, because you think at what point do they stop becoming cute and become a threat, or become at what point, and it's also thinking, I think of it from a perspective, and I've had a lot of conversations with mentors, and I think with the perspective also of it's really important that we are really making a significant impact in the lives of these young people, because these young people are growing up in a time where they're seeing a lot of their parents, grandparents, whoever, going through trauma with all that's happening right now. And those young people will go on, if it's not dealt with, that trauma isn't dealt with in that, or they haven't come to terms with it or face it or got support for it, that's going to trickle down into their children. So even when you think like your little girl, Luke, who's so tiny and beautiful now, it's not impossible, one day when she grows up, she could meet a gentleman that wants to marry her, who is carrying the pain and trauma from what was put on to him. So although we're working with young people now, we always have to be thinking further down, because if I can make a significant impact in 5 young people's lives, and those 5 take what I've taught them, or anyone has taught them, and shared it with another 5, they with another 5, we've impacted many. But it's so important that we are trying our best to get things right now, and really encourage and guide our young people towards thinking about, trauma. I had a young man recently that I've been speaking to about having counselling, and the beauty of team and being a collective is that when I'm thinking to myself, I need him to talk to somebody who really understands what it is, because he's had a bad experience of it before, things being relayed back. And I was able to call on Claude and say, look, Claude, would you be able to have a conversation with this young man, just to explain what it is? Because sometimes there's a stigma, and especially sometimes in the black community, sometimes there's a big stigma about talking to somebody outside of your home and chatting out your business and things like that. And by that collective working, that young man today called his mentor to say, I need to have counselling as soon as possible.
Wow.
And that touched me, because that's a team where we have to be encouraging that people are getting that opportunity to talk, the opportunity to be real and offload, while at the same time being able to maintain the integrity of the relationship that they have with their mentor. Because they may be able to have a great, wonderful relationship with their mentor, but if they're scared to share the traumas they've gone through, what they've experienced, because they're worried how their mentor may look at them, then their mentor isn't really able to help them to the fullest extent. Do you understand? Because the person is really holding back. So the mentor's just helping to set targets for what the young person is saying they need help and support with, whereas there might be some much deeper things. But that young person doesn't want to be real, because they don't want to lose that relationship they have in case they looked at differently. So it's so important that we are having these conversations. I believe many in XLP are.
I think you're right in terms of, the worldwide trauma. Then you've got your borough specific traumas. Then you've got your community traumas, and then you have your tribes within those communities, dealing with their traumas, and everybody trying to find a way to navigate through, their traumas. And I think, I definitely think, whether it is during this time or post lockdown, whatever that looks like, just the importance of therapeutic services, culturally competent therapeutic services
Yes.
is so important for,
Vital.
for our young people. And even the parents, you know, and I know we've had, you know, conversations, Luke, and you know where my heart is when it lies to, you know, therapeutic intervention and support. And you know, I think XLP, what has been really amazing and what I've learned during this time working at the organization is that we're in it for the long haul. You know, it's not a 6-week program. It's not a 12-week program. In fact, it's not even a 6-month program. We're going to journey with you, you know, and some organizations might be like, oh, well, so when does it end? You know, but we journey with, not to, you know, or for, but we journey with. And sometimes we build some amazing relationships with our young people. I was speaking to someone earlier on within the team, within the quadrant. We were just talking about, they raised, you know, can we do some therapeutic intervention support for young people during this time or post? Yeah, I think they were thinking post. And it was like, sometimes what happens, because we're the guys on the ground, you know, not so much me now, but like, yeah, our organization, we're in the soil, where our sleeves are rolled up, we're building, we're connecting, people are trusting us. But in some areas we're not specialists, and then we might make a referral or signpost to, you know, an organization that we don't really know, you know, too well, you know, but we just know that they say that they're a specialist, but it's maybe sometimes a young person might not, you know, get the support that they need because they're not willing to, maybe, I don't know, engage or whatever it may be. The service might not be culturally competent or understand the dynamics of the young person's life. And I think that,
or just not exist, you know.
Yeah, or just not exist. That's right.
Or, you know, lack of funding, or, you know, the economic position we're going to be in just won't exist. And
spot on.
It's going to be on charities and people like ours, you know, who are really able to work and get alongside young people. I can see there being a real need for us. There's been a need, you know, always been a need, but it's only going to ramp up. What we're doing, going into the next season.
Spot on. Yeah.
I just say, I feel like, especially for us, it's like youth work in general, and I've said this recently, youth work in general, to me, with different young people that we work with, it's like we are, like, youth workers are like soldiers, you know, on the battlefield. Do you know what I mean? You're running, you're going on the front line in the army, you know what I mean, on the front line, and you're having to carry these injured soldiers that are wounded, you know, having to carry them back. You've got another youth worker with you supporting you, carry them back, bring them. They need to be left with someone who can heal them, who can help them. Then you go back out and you're dealing with more wounded people. And that's continuously what we're doing. And I think it's so pertinent. Don't even know if that's the right word. I've never used that word before. But that's right. It's so pertinent. There's a lot of words I've been coming up with lately, you know, wow. But it's so pertinent, I think, that when we're doing this work, we have safe hands to put these young people in that can do more than we can. You know, I always say one of my biggest things I say to all my mentors, you know, the best support you can give someone is to refer them on to someone who can help them better than you. The ultimate thing is being support. And I think we really, really need to be having that, where there is that, it's so necessary. It's so necessary.
Yeah, and that's why we don't want to be, you know, we're not the only people doing this, and we don't want to be doing this on our own. We want to work in partnership.
100%.
Local authorities,
100%.
other charities, schools, youth clubs, whatever it is, specialists in the area, counsellors, therapeutic. So yeah, I think that's really true. We're not trying to be the solution here. We're trying to be part of it.
Yeah.
And I suppose, you know, maybe that's a good place to end in a way. You know, that with this whole discussion around racism, we want to be part of the solution. We want to model in the organization. We want to model with the young people what we want to see in society. We're not going to fix it on our own, but we definitely want to be part of the people who are wanting to fix it and work alongside other people for that. Yeah. I think there's no definitive right now in history. You know, there's kind of, we can put out strong statements, which really we want to do, but we also want to be moving and backing up those statements with action, with change. And I think, really, that's something we really feel for the young people is that this, for many, this is a barrier. and it's a barrier to a positive future. And our strapline is about creating positive futures for young people, and that will involve kind of bringing barriers down. That will involve making the system fairer, so that people often talk about disadvantaged young people or people from a place of disadvantage. We're trying to remove some of those disadvantages, and cultural and systemic racism is part of that.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for everything you're doing with young people. Thanks for everything you're doing for the organization. Really appreciate you just having this time to talk today. It's part of many conversations we've had. So but it's nice to do it in a slightly different setting. It's been really good, and I hope that we can now get this song up. Sing, if it's going to come up. So yeah, that's what's coming up next. Thanks, guys.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So now I'm looking forward and thinking back, wondering in the future how would I react to present situations. I'm too young to understand. Would I swallow my pride? Would I take a hand out? Will I be anything? Will I stand out? Cause I'm just starting and I have to work my plans out. My biggest goal is to make myself, my mum and dad proud. So I'll keep grafting, guess we'll see how it pans out. See how it pans out. Wishing I'd gotten the better of my damn doubt. This lock had me down and feeling caged in, and now I know why the caged bird sings, cause freedom don't ring. Well, it's not like it ever really used to. This isn't a feeling we should have to get used to. Can you show me facts and can you tell me something truthful? Stop saying all lives matter and just tell me something useful. I'm outraged and I ain't gonna hold back. The colour of my skin don't mean I should be held back. I'm not a thugger hooligan and no, I don't sell packs. I'm just a kid who's proud to be black. Now it's a crime to say that. You never said it, but I see from your reaction. You take our words and put them through a process of redaction. The censorship is evident, excuses are irrelevant. We're standing in a room, systemic racism's the elephant, ever prevalent. Right across the ocean, from prime ministers to presidents, acting like you're benevolent, acting like you're heaven sent when really you're just racist. And we can back the facts up in 100 different cases. Face it, we should embrace in different races, faces, places. So stop being abrasive. We're not demanding much. Your equality is basic. We're not demanding much. Equality is basic.